How to perform a payroll reconciliation presented by Sandra Clemency, payroll manager at the Central Administrative Office of the Catholic Diocese of Arlington. Performing a payroll reconciliation is a way to keep track of withholding and depositing of taxes, taxable wage calculation, and validation of Ceridian prepared tax returns. It helps prevent out-of-balance conditions and ensures the amounts withheld, deposited, paid, and reported on agree with each other. Performing reconciliations routinely throughout the year allows you to correct wage and tax discrepancies with time to spare before the process of preparing and filing quarterly and year-end returns, thus saving you time in the long run from having quarterly and year-end disasters. The first step in the payroll reconciliation process is to print the total pages of your payroll summary report after each payroll commit. To obtain the total pages of your payroll summary report, go to Payroll Archive Reports. Select your pay group, year, and pay period, then click Refresh. From the list of reports that populate, double-click on the Pay Summary Report to download. Scroll to the end of the report and print the total pages. The second step is to download the payroll reconciliation template from Benergy under the Template and Forms section. There are two templates. One is for a single pay group, and the other is for two pay groups that have the same federal ID number. The payroll reconciliation Excel template contains 12 monthly posting sheets, 4 quarterly recap sheets, a year-to-date recap sheet, and a W-2 recap sheet. All worksheets contain formulas for totaling and populating into other worksheets of the template. In summary, here's how the spreadsheet works. From the payroll summary total pages, post your payroll amounts to the appropriate monthly tab each pay period. Each monthly tab calculates a total for the month and then populates that total into the appropriate quarterly recap worksheet. At quarter end, you will post and reconcile quarter end numbers from the quarterly recap worksheets to Dayforce's quarterly wage and tax report. From the quarterly tab, totals are then populated into the year-to-date recap worksheet. At the end of each quarter, it's also important to reconcile year-to-date by comparing the year-to-date worksheet numbers to Dayforce's wage and tax reports, the year-to-date totals. From the year-to-date worksheet, those numbers populate into the W-2 worksheet. Reconcile your W-2 worksheet totals to the W-2 management reports totals page. This report can be found in the year-end module. Let's look more closely at the third step of the reconciliation process, which is completing the pay period amounts on the monthly tab after each payroll. The monthly tab consists of 6 sections. The first section is the pre-tax deduction section. All pre-tax amounts are posted here, as well as amounts added to wages for group term life. These amounts will be used to assist us in validating the calculation of taxable wages and to validate Box 12 entries on the W-2. The second section is the taxable wage and liability section. Here we are going to log federal and state taxable wages and withholdings that Ceridian has calculated for each paycheck date. The third section is Box 12 validations. For Code W, we're keying the employee and employer contributions to health savings account. And then for the validation of Box 12 Code DD, we are keying employee and employer contributions for medical premiums paid. The fourth section is the validation of our 941 tax deposit. We want to validate that Ceridian has calculated and submitted our federal tax payments accurately. The fifth section is the validation of federal and Medicare taxable wage calculations. Here we want to validate that Dayforce has calculated our federal and Medicare taxable wages correctly. The reasons we are not calculating and validating the Social Security taxable wages is due to the taxable wage cap limits it has. The sixth section is the validation of federal taxable wage to state taxable wage. The difference should be 0. Any calculated differences found will need to be researched, validated, and/or resolved. Let's now look at how to complete each section of the monthly tab. Amounts entered onto the monthly tab can be found from the total pages of the payroll summary report. First, find the pre-tax deductions section on the report and on the spreadsheet. You will need to add the two 403B deduction codes together from the payroll summary report and enter the total in the box where the red line as shown here. Add together the dental pre-tax, medical pre-tax, and vision pre-tax amounts and enter the total on the spreadsheet as coded with the blue line shown here. Enter the employee health savings pre-tax deduction amounts by adding together the HSA Family 125 and the HSA Self 125 codes and enter that total on the spreadsheet coded with the green line as shown here. Double check your pre-tax deduction totals keyed with the totals on the payroll summary report to validate the accuracy of amounts keyed. Then go to the memo earnings section of your payroll summary report and find group term life amounts and enter that on the spreadsheet as highlighted in yellow. Complete the taxable wage and withholding section on the monthly tab by going to the wage and tax liability section of your payroll summary report. Use the limited taxable wages and tax amounts to populate this spreadsheet as shown on the screen. For Maryland, make sure that you are adding the local tax withheld amounts to the Maryland state tax amounts to arrive at total tax withheld for Maryland. To ensure correct reporting on the W-2 for Box 12 Code W for employee and employer health savings contributions, we're going to add together employee deductions for health savings to the employer incentive memo deduction amounts. Employer incentive amounts are added only once a year with the first check in December. For Box 12 Code DD, we need to show the total employee and employer costs for medical coverage. To arrive at this amount, add together from the pre-tax section the medical pre-tax amounts to the employer medical amount, which can be found under the memo earnings section. Please also include in this total any medical premiums paid by personal check. These amounts can be found under the post-tax deduction section. Most of the entries for the validation of the 941 tax deposit section are populated from data already keyed at the top of the spreadsheet. The only amount you need to key in this section is what I have highlighted in yellow. Dayforce's calculated amount of the 941 tax deposit. This amount can be found under the tax service liability section on your payroll summary report. Social Security and Medicare tax withheld amounts are calculated by a formula that takes the Social Security and Medicare taxable wages keyed in the taxable wage section of the spreadsheet and multiplying by the appropriate rates of 6.2 and 1.45%. The spreadsheet then calculates the total, which is then compared to Dayforce's calculated and paid 941 total. Any differences in the amounts that are slightly off is most likely due to rounding issues between the systems. Any large differences need to be researched. In the validation of federal and Medicare taxable wage section, you need to complete the fields highlighted in green. All other data fields are populated from data already keyed above on the spreadsheet. From the earnings section of the payroll summary report, enter total earnings amount into the gross compensation field. Taxable fringe amounts will also need to be keyed here, and they can be found under the memo earnings section of the payroll summary report. For the validation of Medicare wages, you need to first run the religious report of earnings by pay for clergy. This report can be found by going to the menu and choose reporting, then reports. This report will provide you with clergy wages for the pay period. Clergy wages are exempt from Social Security and Medicare taxation. Key in the total of your clergy wages from this report onto your spreadsheet. To run this report, click on it to highlight and then click the run icon. When the window opens, choose your pay group, the pay period, suppress formatting and Excel output, and then click Run Report. Then go to your Dayforce inbox and click on Reports to retrieve the report. Sum your clergy wages and key that total onto your Excel spreadsheet under the Medicare taxable wage section, which is the green highlighted box as seen here. The final validation on the monthly tab for each pay date is the validation between your federal taxable wage total and your state taxable wage total. These amounts should match. One of the reasons federal and state taxable wages can be off from one another is if you have not marked someone's tax screen with a certificate of non-resident for Virginia. The result will be dual taxation. If this is not corrected before year end, the employee will need to file taxes in both Virginia and their state of residence. Ideally, you should be reconciling quarter-to-date totals starting with the last month of each of the quarters. Any discrepancies found can then be corrected with the last check processing of the quarter. Off-cycle quarter-end payroll adjustment runs can be created before the last Friday of the quarter in order to make any additional corrections that are discovered after the accepting of the last payroll of the quarter. The off-cycle adjustment runs help to avoid costly amended returns. Pay particular attention to any needed voided checks for terminated employees, which will cross quarters if keyed in the next payroll. An off-cycle quarter-end run can be created to void a check in the quarter it was issued, thus avoiding the creation of a negative quarter-to-date wage and tax warnings during the next quarter. During the last month of the quarter, print these additional reports from payroll archived reports. Print the total pages from the U.S. wage and tax report. Print the 941 recap page from the state wages paid report. And print the total pages of the W-2 management report found under the year-end module reports W-2 management report. Monthly totals automatically calculate and populate into the appropriate quarterly tab. Insert quarter-to-date limited wage totals from the last page of the U.S. wage and tax report onto the appropriate quarterly tab. Research any calculated differences. Check your entries and formulas first. If you still cannot figure out where the difference is coming from, please send your reconciliation spreadsheet to payroll support, and we will assist you in resolving your out of balance issues. Why are we balancing to limited taxable wages? Limited taxable wages are the amount of employees' earnings that are subject to taxation. Limited taxable wages are wages up to a specific limit, such as the Social Security taxable wage base. Total taxable wages are employees' earnings that are taxable but are not necessarily subject to tax withholdings, such as earnings above a wage limit. Some additional reconciliation differences could be due to coding errors on an employee's tax definition screen in Dayforce when an employee works in one state and lives in another. FICA exemptions not keyed correctly in Dayforce for clergy or certain employee visas. Deceased wage reporting can cause a reconciliation issue because federal and state taxable wages are not reported on Form W-2. Always check your entries and formulas for key errors. Make sure that you have accounted for any off-cycle payroll adjustment runs. Here are some tips for resolving reconciliation differences. Run an employee pay history report to investigate any issues found for a particular employee, as the report includes all payments and adjustments for an employee over a specified date range. Each payroll, make sure you are closely reviewing all audit reports and the problems panel for questionable payroll situations. Before committing your payroll, ensure you are reviewing the Preview Payments tab for any additional legal entities listed that shouldn't be there. Being proactive in resolving all out-of-balance issues, including tax code fallouts before the last Friday of the quarter, will ensure accurate reporting and reducing the need for costly amended returns. The fifth step of the reconciliation process is to complete the year-to-date and W-2 tabs of the payroll reconciliation spreadsheet. Using the W-2 management report balance year-to-date after each quarter by inserting the year-to-date totals from the U.S. wage and tax report into the year-to-date tab on your spreadsheet. Quarterly totals populate in from the 4 quarters tabs to arrive at the year-to-date totals on the year-to-date tab. These totals are compared to the totals taken from the total pages of the U.S. wage and tax report. Key amounts into the orange column, research any calculated differences. Note, box 12 quarter-to-date numbers can be taken from the last payroll summary report of the quarter. The W-2 management report includes the data that will be printed on the employee's W-2. This report will also show you any exceptions that may cause issues with the printing of the W-2. This report can be found under the year-end module. Use the W-2 management report to balance year-to-date W-2 information after each quarter by inserting the year-to-date totals from the W-2 management report into the W-2 tab on your spreadsheet. Then research any calculated differences. Out-of-balance differences on the year-to-date and W-2 tabs can be due to transposed or incorrectly keyed numbers. Did you use wages to the limit or total wages when completing your reconciliation? Are all off-cycle runs accounted for? Are the spreadsheet formulas correct? If you still can't figure out why you are not reconciling, please contact payroll support for assistance. The sixth and final step to the reconciliation process is to compare your quarterly reconciliation spreadsheets to your Ceridian tax returns. Your Ceridian tax statement returns can be retrieved from Source Tax Online approximately 45 days after the end of the quarter. From your Ceridian quarterly tax statements, balance your federal Form 941 totals with the corresponding quarterly tab. Validate your state taxable wages and tax withholdings from the quarterly tab with the Ceridian quarterly statement of deposit and state taxes. Note, Maryland taxable wages will be off from these quarterly tax statement numbers as Ceridian is adding local wages and state wages together. Totals from the W-2 management report is what will be reported on the year-end reports. These quarterly wages are not being reported to Maryland, and they do not require quarterly reporting. Create a quarterly payroll file by keeping all your total pages used to complete your payroll reconciliation spreadsheet. Print out your reconciliation Excel pages, print out your Source Tax online tax statements, and your year-end W-2 management report. filed together to be completely ready in case of an internal or external audit. That concludes our presentation. If you should require any further assistance or have any questions, please send them to payrollsupport@arlingtondiocese.org. Thanks.